The night my life changed, I was eating a vending machine dinner in the corner of a Greyhound station at 1:17 in the morning, trying to look like a man who had somewhere to be. I didn't. I had a ticket to Denver in my jacket pocket, a backpack at my feet, and a half-crushed bag of pretzels on my knee. I was 27 years old, a freelance website designer with no office, no wife, no dog, and apparently no better plan than running from a life that had become too quiet. Then she walked in wearing a blue raincoat, one silver heel, and the expression of a woman who had just survived something she refused to cry about in public. She looked around the station like every empty chair had been assigned to someone else. Then she stopped in front of me. "Can I sit with you?" she asked. "Not is this seat taken?" "Not, do you mind? Can I sit with you?" There was a difference. Even half asleep and emotionally bankrupt, I heard it. I looked at the row of empty plastic seats stretching all the way to the bathrooms. "You know there are about 40 other seats." "I know." "That one over there has a better view of the vending machine." "I'm not here for the view." Her voice had a little crack in it, but her chin stayed high. She was maybe 25, with dark blonde hair pinned up badly, like she'd done it in a moving car. Rain dotted her lashes. One hand clutched a small black purse, the other held the broken strap of her missing shoes partner. I should have said yes right away. Instead, because I was tired and lonely, and apparently still capable of being awkward, I said, "I should warn you I'm not great company tonight." For the first time, her mouth twitched. "Perfect," she said. "Neither am I." So I moved my backpack. She sat beside me close enough that the cold from her coat brushed my sleeve. She smelled faintly like rain, hotel soap, and gardenias. I remember that because memory is cruel. It saves details before you know they matter. "My name's Graham," I said. She stared ahead at the departure board. "Lydia." "Nice to meet you, Lydia." "That's optimistic." I laughed before I could stop myself, and she glanced at me like she hadn't meant to be funny, but she was pleased that I'd noticed. Behind us, the station buzzed with fluorescent lights. A man snored across 3 seats near Gate 4. Somewhere down the hall, an employee dragged a mop bucket like it had personally offended him. Lydia crossed her ankles, then winced when her bare foot touched the cold floor. "You lost a shoe," I said. "Technically, I abandoned it." "Was it a mutual decision?" "It betrayed me on Pine Street." "Pine Street is hard on relationships." That got me a real smile. Small, tired, but real. It changed her whole face. She wasn't just pretty. Pretty was too flat a word. She had that kind of beauty that seemed more connected to motion than features. The way her eyes sharpened when she was amused, the way she held herself together by sheer will. I noticed all of that while pretending to study my pretzels like they contained state secrets. "What bus are you waiting for?" I asked. "Whichever one leaves first." "That's not usually how tickets work." "I'm improvising." A drop of rain slid from her hairline down her temple. Without thinking, I pulled a napkin from my bag of pretzels and held it out. She looked at it, then at me. "Are you offering me a pretzel napkin?" "It's unused." "Your standards are reassuring. You asked to sit with me. This is the luxury package." She took it, dabbed at her temple, and for 1 second her fingers brushed mine. It was nothing. Barely contact. But something passed through me anyway, quick and inconvenient. I had spent the last 8 months avoiding anything that looked like wanting. My ex-fiancée, Heather, had left me with a sentence so clean it still cut. "You're kind, Graham, but you never really let me in." At the time, I'd thought that was unfair. I paid attention. I remembered birthdays, I fixed things, I listened. But letting someone in was different from standing near the door with a toolkit. So I'd packed my laptop, sublet my apartment in St. Louis, and bought a one-way ticket west because apparently men in emotional crisis still believe geography is therapy. Then Lydia appeared beside me, wet and stubborn and luminous under terrible bus station lighting, and asked if she could sit with me like she was asking for something bigger than a chair. A man in a charcoal suit entered the station. Lydia's body changed before her face did. Her shoulders tightened. Her hand closed around the purse in her lap. I followed her gaze. The man wasn't looking at the schedule. He was scanning faces. "Is that why you picked me?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer. "Lydia." Her eyes stayed forward. "I didn't want to sit alone." The man turned toward our row. I felt her shift closer, just an inch. Not hiding behind me, not exactly, more like choosing a side. That small movement did something to me. Not heroic, not dramatic. It made me want to be worthy of the trust she had placed in the space between our sleeves. "X?" I asked. "Almost." "That sounds like a whole category of bad." "It is." The man spotted her. His expression didn't turn violent or wild. That would have been easier. He smiled like he was relieved, like he had every right to walk over and reclaim the conversation. "Lydia," he called. She inhaled through her nose. I leaned back in my chair, casual as I could manage. "Want me to pretend to be your boyfriend?" She finally looked at me. Her eyes were green, not bright green, storm green. The kind you notice once and then compare every other green thing to for the rest of your life. "That depends," she said. "Are you any good at it?" "I have references, but they're mixed." The corner of her mouth lifted again. Then, before I could prepare myself, she took my hand. Not loosely, not politely. She threaded her fingers through mine, set our joined hands on her knee, and turned toward the approaching man. My pulse did something embarrassing. The man stopped in front of us, his polished shoes shining under the station lights. His gaze dropped to our hands. "Who's this?" he asked. Lydia squeezed my fingers once. I looked up at him and said the first thing that came to mind. "I'm the man she chose to sit with." The smile disappeared from his face, and Lydia, still holding my hand, whispered so softly only I could hear it. "Please don't let go. Please don't let go." 4 words, and suddenly my one-way ticket to Denver felt less like an escape plan and more like a test. I kept my hand wrapped around Lydia's. The man in the suit looked me over, unimpressed. He was handsome in the expensive way, good haircut, sharp jaw, watch that probably cost more than my laptop. But there was something rehearsed about him, like even his concern had been practiced in a mirror. "Lydia," he said, ignoring me now, "this is ridiculous. You ran out in the middle of our engagement party." My fingers tightened before I could stop them. Engagement party. Lydia's thumb brushed once across my knuckle. A tiny motion. A warning, maybe, or comfort. I wasn't sure which of us needed it more. "I didn't run out," she said. "I walked out." "In one shoe?" She lifted her chin. "I was committed to the exit." I almost smiled. Wrong moment, but there it was. He sighed like she was a child making a scene in a restaurant. "Your mother is frantic. My mother is embarrassed. There's a difference. Come home, we'll talk privately." "No." The word was quiet, but I felt it through her hand. His attention swung back to me. "And you are?" "Still the man she chose to sit with." Lydia made a sound that might have been a laugh if she hadn't swallowed it. His eyes narrowed. "This doesn't concern you." "That's up to her." For the first time, he looked truly annoyed. Lydia leaned forward, still holding on to me. "Oliver, I'm not marrying you." The station seemed to hush around that sentence. Oliver's face hardened, then smoothed. "You're upset. I'm clear. You're being impulsive. I was impulsive when I said yes. This is the first sensible thing I've done all year." That one landed. I saw it hit him. He lowered his voice. "You'll regret embarrassing me." There it was. Not a plea. Not heartbreak. Ownership with a polished finish. Lydia's grip trembled. I turned my hand palm up under hers, letting her choose whether to hold on. She did. Then she looked at Oliver and said, "I already regret almost becoming someone who was afraid of you." He stared at her for a long second. Then he gave a short laugh, pulled out his phone, and stepped back. "This isn't over." Lydia watched him walk toward the glass doors. He didn't leave immediately. He stood outside under the awning, phone to his ear, his reflection ghosting over the rain-black window. Only when he was on the other side of the glass did Lydia exhale. I didn't let go until she did. "Actually, that's not true." She loosened her fingers. I waited. She looked down at our hands, then back at me. "You can let go now." "Can I?" Her lips parted. I meant it as a joke. Mostly. Her eyes searched mine, and the fluorescent station lights buzzed overhead, and I became painfully aware that we were strangers, that she had just ended an engagement in front of me, that my palm still remembered the shape of hers. Finally, she said, "Not yet." So I didn't. We sat there holding hands like teenagers on a first date, except one of us was barefoot, the other had pretzel salt on his jeans, and there was an abandoned fiancé outside making angry phone calls. "You okay?" I asked. "No," she swallowed. "But I think I'm becoming okay." "That's a good direction." She glanced at me. "Do you always say things like that?" "Like what?" "Quiet things. Useful things." "No, sometimes I say stupid things too. Give me time." She smiled again, and it did the same dangerous thing to my chest. An announcement crackled overhead. The Denver bus would be delayed 40 minutes due to weather. Lydia tilted her head. "Denver? That's me. Are you going home?" "No." "Running away?" The question was soft, not accusing. I looked at our joined hands instead of her face, trying to see if I can become someone else. That rarely works. "You sound experienced." I tried to become Mrs. Oliver Vale." "Bad fit?" "Like shoes that draw blood." I looked down at her bare foot. "That metaphor is upsettingly literal." She laughed then. A real laugh, surprised out of her. It turned heads. It turned mine too, even though I was already looking. I wanted to hear it again. That was the first selfish thought I had about Lydia. Not that I wanted to save her. Not that I wanted to solve her night. I wanted to be the person who made her laugh when her life was breaking open. "Come on," I said, standing. She blinked up at me. "Where?" "I'm buying you coffee." "It's 1:30 in the morning." "Then it'll be terrible coffee, very intimate." Intimate? I felt my ears heat. Caffeine-wise. She studied me, amused despite everything. "Are you asking me on a bus station date, Graham?" The way she said my name did something unfair to me. "I'm asking if you'd like to walk 20 feet with me to a machine that may or may not produce liquid." "Romance isn't dead." "Not on my watch." She stood, and because of the missing shoe, she wobbled. I caught her elbow. She didn't pull away. For a moment, we were close enough that I could see a tiny freckle beneath her left eye. "Careful," I said. Her gaze dropped briefly to my mouth, then back up. "I'm trying," she said. Neither of us moved. Then the coffee machine groaned in the distance like a dying appliance, and we both laughed too quietly. I gave her my jacket to put under her bare foot while we stood at the vending machine. She argued for exactly 8 seconds before accepting it. "You'll get the floor on it," she said. "It's a jacket. It's had worse." "What happened to it?" "I wore it through a breakup, 3 bad airports, and 1 misguided camping trip." "Sounds resilient." "Or poorly cared for." She looked at me over the rim of the paper cup as the machine spat coffee into it. "Which are you?" The question landed deeper than it should have. I could have made another joke, I almost did. Instead, I said, "Both, probably." Her expression softened. I handed her the coffee. Our fingers touched again, and this time neither of us pretended not to notice. "My ex said I never let her in," I admitted. "I thought being dependable was enough. Turns out sometimes you can be standing right beside someone and still be hiding." Lydia held my gaze. The station felt far away for a second. "I said yes to Oliver because he made my life feel planned," she said. "No gaps, no uncertainty, no room to disappoint anyone." Her laugh was small. Tonight I realized there was also no room for me. I wanted to reach for her, but I didn't. Then Lydia did. She slipped her hand into mine again, slowly this time. Not because Oliver was watching, not because she needed a disguise, because she wanted to. "I like the gaps," she said. My throat tightened. "Yeah," she nodded. "That's where people can surprise you." We took our awful coffees back to the corner seats. She put her cold foot on my jacket. I gave her the last of my pretzels. She wrinkled her nose and ate them anyway. Outside, Oliver's car finally pulled away from the curb. Lydia watched the taillights disappear, then leaned her shoulder against mine. Not dramatically, not like a woman collapsing, like someone choosing warmth. My bus number flashed on the board. Boarding soon. Lydia saw it at the same time I did. Her shoulder stayed against mine, but her voice changed. You should go. I looked at the ticket in my hand. Denver, distance, reinvention, a clean exit from a life that had taught me how to leave before being left. Then I looked at Lydia, barefoot on my jacket, rain drying in her hair, green eyes daring me not to hide behind practicality. What if I don't want to? I asked. Her breath caught. That's not a bus station question, she whispered. No, I said. I don't think it is. The bus driver called for Denver passengers a second time. I stood there with my ticket pinched between two fingers, feeling 27 years of caution gather behind me like a crowd. Lydia didn't ask me to stay. That was the thing that undid me. She just watched me with those storm green eyes, her bare foot tucked on my jacket, her hands wrapped around a paper cup of terrible coffee, like it was the last warm thing in the world. You paid for that ticket, she said. I paid for a lot of bad ideas. Denver might not be a bad idea. It was an escape route. And now? I looked at her. Really looked. At the smudged mascara beneath one eye, the stubborn set of her mouth, the way she was trying not to hope because hope made people vulnerable. Now there's a woman in one shoe eating my pretzels, I said. Plans change. Her laugh came out shaky. The bus driver called again. I walked to the counter. The old man behind it barely glanced up from his crossword. Boarding's outside. I'm not boarding. He lifted his eyebrows. You want a refund? No. I looked back at Lydia. I want to know which buses leave after sunrise. The man sighed, like romance was a scheduling inconvenience. Plenty. Good. When I returned, Lydia was standing, my jacket folded over one arm. You missed your bus, she said. I noticed. Because of me. I took my jacket from her, then didn't put it on. I was too warm suddenly, though the station was freezing. Because of me, I said. I've spent a long time leaving rooms before anyone could ask me to stay. Tonight I wanted to be the kind of man who stays because he chooses to. Her eyes filled, but she blinked it back. That was a dangerous thing to say to a woman who just rejected a very expensive cake. How expensive? 7 tears. I winced. Then I should probably offer you breakfast. At 2 in the morning? Breakfast is a state of mind. She smiled and there it was again, the feeling that some locked room inside me had a window cracked open. There was a 24-hour diner across from the station, its neon sign buzzing pink through the rain. I bought Lydia a pair of foam flip-flops from the station gift kiosk, bright yellow with little cartoon suns on them. She stared at them in horror. No. They're cheerful. They are criminal. They were $6. They should have paid you. You can either wear these or continue your tragic Cinderella era. She narrowed her eyes. Cinderella got a prince. Cinderella had poor standards. He needed a shoe to recognize her. Lydia looked down at the flip-flops, then at me. Fine, but if anyone asks, you forced me. If anyone asks, I'll tell them you selected them with joy. She slipped them on and took 2 experimental steps. The slap against the tile was so ridiculous we both started laughing. At the diner, we took a booth by the window. Rain dragged silver lines down the glass. A waitress with a pencil behind her ear called us honeys and didn't ask why Lydia wore an evening dress under a raincoat with beach shoes in October. It felt like a date, not a pretend one, not a favor. A real, impossible, fluorescent-lit date with burnt coffee and laminated menus. Lydia caught me looking at her over the top of mine. What? Nothing. That was not a nothing look. I was thinking you're handling all this better than I would. I'm not handling it. I'm sitting in a diner with a stranger because if I stop moving, I may become a puddle. I'm not a stranger. Oh. You know my name, my destination, my jacket trauma, and my pretzel generosity. True, practically married. The word hung between us for half a second, then she grimaced. Too soon, she said. Very. We both laughed, but softer now. The waitress brought pancakes neither of us remembered ordering. Lydia poured too much syrup on hers and watched it flood the plate. My father died when I was 16, she said suddenly. After that, my mother became very certain about everything. What school I should choose, what job, what kind of man was dependable. Oliver. On paper, yes. She dragged her fork through the syrup. He never shouted, never hit anything, never looked messy enough to be cruel. He just made every room smaller. Every opinion I had became something we'd discuss later. Every no became a negotiation. I listened, really listened. No fixing, no toolkit at the door. My mother loved him, she said, or loved what he represented. Stability, money, a family name that sounded good next to ours. What did you love? She looked up. I held my breath, afraid she'd say his name. I loved being approved of, she said. That's not the same thing. No, I said quietly. It isn't. Her eyes searched mine. And you? What did you love about the woman who said you never let her in? I deserve that. The idea that if I did everything right, I'd never be left, I said. I confused love with good behavior. Lydia's expression changed, softened in a way that made me feel seen and exposed. Graham, she said, and my name in her voice felt less like identification and more like a hand to the chest. Yeah? You're not boring. I blinked. Was that a concern? You have the energy of a man who worries he's boring. That is alarmingly specific. You make jokes when you're scared. Also specific. You stayed when you could have left. She leaned forward. That isn't boring. The diner lights hummed. Her knee touched mine under the table. Neither of us moved away. I wanted to kiss her. The thought arrived simple and bright, not because she needed comfort, not because the night was dramatic, but because she was Lydia and she had syrup on her thumb and courage shaking in her hands. She noticed me noticing. What? She whispered. You have syrup. Where? I pointed to my own thumb. She looked down, embarrassed, and before I could overthink it, I reached across the table with a napkin. Slowly, giving her time to pull back. She didn't. I wiped the syrup from her thumb and her fingers curled lightly around mine. The air between us changed. Graham, she said again, barely audible. I know, I said, though I didn't. Not fully. She stood first. For one panicked second, I thought she was leaving. Instead, she slid into my side of the booth, close, shoulder to shoulder, hip to hip. Her raincoat brushed my jeans and her hair smelled like gardenias again. I don't want my first brave thing to be running away, she said. I turned toward her. Our faces were inches apart. What do you want it to be? Her gaze dropped to my mouth. This. She kissed me. Not wildly, not like a woman rebounding from disaster. Carefully, as if she was asking and answering at the same time. I kissed her back just as carefully, one hand lifting to her cheek. Her skin was cool from the rain, but she leaned into my palm like warmth was something we could make between us if we tried. When we parted, she kept her forehead against mine. That was a terrible idea, she whispered. Top 5 terrible ideas of my night. Only top 5? I bought the flip-flops. She laughed against my mouth, and I kissed her again because I could. Because she smiled first. Because for once in my life, I didn't want to turn away from the part that mattered. Afterward, she rested her head on my shoulder, and we sat like that while rain worried the windows and dawn slowly considered arriving. My apartment is 3 blocks from here, she said. I need clothes, my phone charger, my passport if Oliver hasn't convinced my mother to hide it. You don't have to go alone. She lifted her head. I know. Something in the way she said it stopped me. She wasn't asking for a bodyguard. She was asking if the man who missed his bus would keep choosing her once the night became morning. I took her hand beneath the table. Then I'll come because I want to, I said. And after that, if you still want breakfast at a normal hour, I'm buying. Her smile trembled. Second date already? Only if the first one counts. Lydia looked at our joined hands, then back at me. It counts, she said. More than it should. We left the diner at 4:06 a.m. full of pancakes, bad coffee, and the kind of silence that follows a first kiss when neither person knows whether to act normal or admit nothing will ever be normal again. The rain had softened to mist. Lydia walked beside me in her yellow sun flip-flops, evening dress peeking beneath her raincoat, one hand tucked in mine. Every few steps, the flip-flops slapped the wet sidewalk. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" "For sounding like a duck. You sound like a glamorous duck." "That is not a compliment. It is from the right man." She looked sideways at me. "And are you the right man?" The question should have scared me. It did scare me, but not enough to lie. "I don't know yet," I said, "but I'd like to apply." Her fingers tightened around mine. Her apartment building was a narrow brick place above a closed flower shop. Lydia paused at the entrance, staring at the dark windows like the building might accuse her of something. "I chose this place because it was the first thing that felt like mine," she said. "Oliver hated it." "Then I like it already." "He said the stairs were impractical." "Strong villain energy." That earned a smile, but it faded quickly. Inside, the hallway smelled like old wood and lilies from the shop below. We climbed 3 flights, slow because of her shoes. At the top, she stopped outside 3B and took a breath. "You can wait here if you want." "I can. But, but I want to be where you want me." She looked at me for a long moment, then unlocked the door and let me in. Her apartment was small, warm, and alive in a way mine had never been. Books stacked on the floor, a green velvet chair by the window, half-finished sketches pinned near a tiny desk, a chipped mug full of paintbrushes, plants crowding the sill like gossiping neighbors. "This is you," I said. Lydia's eyes flicked to mine. "Messy? Honest." Something in her face opened. Then she kissed me. Quick at first, like gratitude had tripped and fallen into desire. I barely had time to set my backpack down before she stepped closer, hands curling into my shirt. I held her gently, giving her room to change her mind. She didn't. The kiss deepened, slow and searching. Her mouth was soft, her body warm through the damp raincoat. When my back touched the door, she laughed against my lips. "What?" I whispered. "I've never kissed anyone in my hallway like a reckless person. Do you want to stop being reckless?" She considered me, eyes bright. "Not yet." So I kissed her again. For a few minutes, there was no Oliver, no canceled wedding cake, no bus to Denver. There was just Lydia's hand at my jaw and my heart acting like it had been waiting years to recognize her. When we finally pulled apart, she rested her forehead against my chest. "I need 10 minutes," she said. "Clothes, charger, dignity." "I can help with 2 of those." She lifted her head. "Which 2?" "Charger and dignity. I'm excellent at standing around respectfully." "Shame. I was hoping you had a system for packing dresses." "I fold everything like a surrender flag." She smiled, then disappeared into the bedroom. I stood in her living room and tried not to look like a man falling in love before sunrise. On the coffee table sat a framed photo of Lydia younger, maybe 19, laughing beside a man with the same green eyes. Her father, I guessed. Next to it was an invitation, thick cream paper, her name printed beside Oliver's in gold. "Lydia Eleanor Hart and Oliver James Vale request the honor." I turned it face down. A phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Lydia came out in jeans and a soft gray sweater, hair down now, damp waves falling around her shoulders. The sight of her in ordinary clothes hit me harder than the evening dress had. She looked less like a runaway bride, more like a woman I wanted to know on grocery store mornings and boring Tuesdays. "My mother," she said, picking up the phone. "You don't have to answer." "I do." She looked at me. "But stay?" "I'm here." She put it on speaker with trembling fingers. "Lydia?" A woman's voice snapped. "Thank God. Oliver has been looking everywhere. Do you understand what you've done?" Lydia closed her eyes. I moved closer, not touching yet. Waiting. "Yes," she said. "I ended an engagement." "You humiliated 2 families." "I saved myself from a marriage." A sharp silence. Then her mother lowered her voice. "Darling, cold feet are normal." "This wasn't cold feet." "Oliver says you were confused, emotional, that some man at the station inserted himself." I almost laughed. inserted myself, like a suspicious comma. Lydia looked at me then, and something steadied in her face. No, she said. Graham didn't take me from anyone. I sat down beside him because I wanted to. I kissed him because I wanted to. And I'm standing in my apartment now because I want my own life back. My breath caught. Her mother gasped. You kissed a stranger? Lydia's cheeks flushed, but she didn't look away from me. Yes, she said, and for the first time in months, I felt like myself. I had no clever thought, no joke ready. I just stood there, being chosen out loud. Her mother's voice broke, not with anger this time, but fear. Lydia, what will you do? Lydia swallowed. I don't know, but I won't marry him to make everyone comfortable. She ended the call before another argument could begin. For a moment, the apartment was silent except for the radiator ticking. Then Lydia set the phone down and covered her face. I went to her slowly. Hey, she shook her head. I can't believe I said that. You were magnificent. I said I kissed a stranger to my mother. I'm honored to be promoted from station furniture. A laugh escaped through her hands. I gently pulled them down. Her eyes were wet. I meant it, she whispered. What I said. Not because I'm confused, not because you were kind at the right moment. I wanted to kiss you. I wanted you to, I said. Very badly. Her smile trembled. And I want to know what you're like after sleep, I continued. And what music you hate. And whether you always drown pancakes. And whether you'll still hold my hand when there's no one around to prove anything to. She looked at our hands, then laced her fingers through mine. Like this? Exactly like that. She stepped into me and wrapped both arms around my waist. I held her, cheek against her hair, while morning light began to gray the windows. I'm scared, she said into my chest. Me too. That doesn't sound comforting. I'm trying honesty, it's new. She laughed softly, then tilted her face up. This kiss was different. No panic, no rain, no audience, just choice. When it ended, she touched my cheek with her fingertips. Don't get on a bus today. I won't. Don't disappear when this becomes complicated. I won't. She studied me like she was deciding whether to believe in the shape of a future. Then she nodded once. Okay, she said. Then stay for morning. We stayed for morning. Not in the dramatic way people mean in songs. We stayed in the ordinary way, which felt more dangerous and more intimate. Lydia changed into wool socks. I made toast badly. She stood beside me in her tiny kitchen, watching smoke curl from the toaster like evidence. You said you could help with dignity, she said. I may have exaggerated. You burned bread. I transformed it. Into what? A warning. She laughed, and I turned toward the sound like a plant toward sun. We ate on the floor because her table was covered in sketches. She showed me one after another. Window displays she'd designed for the flower shop downstairs, charcoal portraits of strangers on trains, a half-finished drawing of a woman standing at the edge of a road with her shoes in her hand. That one feels familiar, I said. She looks braver than I felt. She looks exactly as brave as you were. Lydia went quiet, then leaned her shoulder into mine. You keep saying things that make me want to believe you. Good. That's all? Good? I'm trying not to ruin it by talking too much. Graham, she said, smiling. You missed a bus for me. I think we've passed Casual. My heart kicked. Outside, the city woke up wet and gray. Delivery trucks hissed through puddles. The flower shop owner unlocked the door below. Somewhere in Lydia's bedroom, her phone kept buzzing, but she didn't reach for it. I need to deal with all of that, she said eventually. I know. And you need to decide where you're going. I know that too. Her smile faded. So I told her the truth before fear could edit it. I don't want to go to Denver today. I don't know if I belong here. I don't know if this is madness or timing or the universe having a strange sense of humor. But I know I want to take you to dinner when neither of us is in crisis. I want to earn your trust slowly. I want to let you in, even if I'm bad at it at first. Lydia looked down at her hands. And I don't want to be your escape, I added. I want to be someone you choose when you're free. Her eyes lifted to mine, bright with tears she didn't hide this time. Then ask me properly, she said. I swallowed. Lydia Hart, when you have ended an engagement, slept at least 4 hours, and purchased footwear not designed for a beach child, would you let me take you on a second date? She laughed through the tears. Yes, she said. But I'm keeping the flip-flops. Sentimental? Evidence. A knock came at the door before I could answer. We both froze. Lydia stood. I stood with her, but she held up a hand. Not to stop me from helping, but to remind both of us she could open her own door. When she did, Oliver stood in the hallway. His suit was wrinkled now. His perfect hair had lost the argument with the rain. His gaze moved from Lydia to me, then back. I came for the ring, he said. Lydia's face went pale, but she didn't shrink. She crossed to the little dish by the window, picked up the diamond ring, and returned to the door. For a second, she held it in her palm, a small, hard star that had once looked like a future. Then she placed it in his hand. I hope you find someone who wants the life you're offering, she said. It isn't me. Oliver looked like he wanted to argue. Maybe he wanted to wound her one last time? But there is a certain kind of clarity that leaves no handle for anyone to grab. He closed his fingers around the ring. You'll regret this, he said. Lydia glanced back at me, not for permission, not for rescue. Just because I was there, because being seen made the words easier. No, she said. I think regret is what I just gave back. Then she shut the door. Her whole body shook after, and I stepped close. She came to me willingly, folding into my arms. I kissed her hair, her temple, then her mouth when she lifted her face. It wasn't a victory kiss, it was softer than that. A promise beginning to learn its own shape. By noon, Lydia had called her mother again. This time, not on speaker. She cried. She got angry. She listened. She said, I love you, but I am not asking your permission to be myself. I sat on the fire escape outside her kitchen window to give her privacy, drinking coffee from the chipped mug full of paint stains because she had forgotten it was not a drinking mug. When she found me there, she laughed so hard she had to hold the window frame. You're going to poison yourself. I wondered why it tasted like blue. She climbed out beside me, wrapped in a blanket, and tucked her feet under my thigh for warmth. So, she said, you're still here. So are you. I live here. Then your commitment is stronger. She smiled, but it softened into something serious. Stay in the city for a week. My breath caught. Not with me, she added quickly. I mean, not because you have to. Find a room, work from wherever. Let's see what this is in daylight. In daylight, I repeated. And after sleep. And after I buy real shoes. And after you stop drinking paint water. That may take time. I'm willing to be patient. That word, willing, felt like a door opening. So I stayed. Not in her apartment, not at first. I rented a room above a bakery 5 blocks away where everything I owned smelled like cinnamon by the second day. Lydia and I took walks. We had that second date, then a third, then a 10th. We moved slowly, except when we didn't. She learned that I hated olives and loved old bookstores. I learned she sang off-key when she cooked and cried at happy endings, but not sad ones. 3 weeks later, her mother came to visit. I was terrified. Lydia squeezed my hand under the cafe table and whispered, she can smell fear. Her mother was elegant, sharp-eyed, and colder to me than the weather. But when Lydia spoke about reopening her design portfolio, about taking freelance work, about not knowing everything and being alive anyway, her mother's face cracked. I thought safety was love, she said quietly. Lydia reached across the table. I know. That was not a perfect day. Perfect days are usually fake. But it was a beginning. 6 months later, I gave up pretending Denver had been the destination. My work traveled well. My heart apparently had found a lease. Lydia and I moved into a larger apartment above the flower shop, one with enough light for her drawing table and enough wall space for my terrible thrift store art. We fought sometimes, about money, about silence, about my habit of trying to fix feelings with solutions. But when I started to retreat, she would touch my wrist and say, door open, Graham. And I would try. A year after that night, we went back to the bus station. Not because we needed to leave, because Lydia said anniversaries should honor the strange places that save us. We sat in the same corner beneath the same buzzing lights. I bought pretzels from the same vending machine. She wore a green dress, and hidden beneath it, the yellow sun flip-flops. You did not, I said. She lifted her skirt an inch, proud. Evidence. I laughed, and she leaned into me, her hand finding mine like it had always known the route. Can I sit with you? She asked. I looked around at the empty seats. You know there are about 40 other chairs? I'm not here for the chairs. I kissed her then, right there in the Greyhound station, with pretzel salt on my fingers and her smile against my mouth. And when she pulled back, I reached into my jacket pocket, not for a diamond meant to impress anyone, but for a simple ring we had chosen together in a tiny shop where Lydia had cried because nobody was telling her what to want. She said yes before I finished asking, so that is the truth. My life did not change because a stranger sat beside me. It changed because when she asked, "Can I sit with you?" I made room. And then, somehow, we both stayed. What would you have done if a stranger in the middle of the night asked, "Can I sit with you?" Have you ever had one unexpected moment change the direction of your life? Tell me your story in the comments. And for those who'd like to be a little closer to us, we've opened memberships where you'll get shorter exclusive stories every week with no ads. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.